Hello and welcome to another episode of our weekly blockchain gaming roundup with me, Jenny Jordan, and co-host John Jordan. Hi, John. How's your week been?
Yeah. Quite a lot to talk about this week.
Good. Yes, it is Friday, the 25th of April, and as you said, quite a lot to talk about. Let's start off by talking about a partnership that's been in the works for about 2 years between one of the sort of biggest traditional gaming studios that ventured into Web3 sort of early on, formed a partnership with Immutable 2 years ago, and we've been sort of waiting and seeing what's going to come of this, and now they have revealed it in the form of Might and Magic Fates, which is another trading card game. So let's have your opinion on that, and let's give us a bit more insight into what the game and the collaboration.
Yeah. So, as you say, Ubisoft have, to be fair to them, been consistently interested in blockchain since sort of 2017. I think they did, certainly 2017, 2018, they were doing their first sort of prototype. They did this game that actually never came out. It's just an internal prototype. That was quite interesting. And they, messed around with some NFTs on the Tezos blockchain that didn't sort of turn out very well. And last year they launched 2 games, both of which were sort of interesting, but neither of which I think you could say sort of were a success. But they've been working with Immutable. I think that was publicly announced a year ago, but they've been working on the game for over two years. So Might and Magic is a sort of I'm going to say a really well-known IP. It sort of is, but it's sort of not like the highest quality sort of IP. It's been around for a long time, sort of like as a role-playing game. And the company behind it, it's probably about even 15, 20 years ago, went bust. And basically the IP was knocking around, and Ubisoft picked it up and have done a few games there. So it's sort of, in a sense, one of those ones where some people are complaining why they're not doing a sort of Assassin's Creed blockchain game, but you sort of, the reason why they're not doing that, because those games are massive and they're really sort of fundamental to what Ubisoft's doing. Whereas, lots of some other IP they've got, blockchain it's clearly, still very experimental, and these games at the moment are not getting massive audiences. So from that point of view, it feels like a sort of a reasonable IP to choose. It's sort of known. I guess there was some people say there are some fans around it, but it's not like a massive fan base around it. So you have a relatively sort of clear sort of playing field in order to sort of reimagine what you're going to do. As you say, it's a trading card game, which probably I'm personally a little bit over indexed in my hatred of trading card games. It's not really my hatred of trading card games. I think it's been very clear for a long time that trading card games are, look, again, it's like a niche sort of genre, but it's a fairly big niche. But it's proven to be a niche that it's very hard to sort of grow. There are people who are really obsessed with these games. Obviously, the original Magic the Gathering card game, the physical card game, that's still as popular as ever, I would imagine. During COVID, people really got into that sort of stuff again. And there's Hearthstone, the big one from Blizzard, which is sort of peaked as an IP, but still fairly successful. And so lots of people see those games, fairly successful, sort of big games, and go, we can improve that in some way. But it's just proven not to be the case. So some very big companies, Valve, I guess, is the most sort of well known. A few years ago, they sort of brought together sort of a dream team of people who'd made trading card games to try and make this new trading card game. And it was like they're the biggest PC sort of games developer. Obviously, they run Steam. They couldn't get it to work. That product shut down. It's called Artifact. Shut down really, really quickly. Not shut down, but basically they stopped development of it. So it's sort of one of these weird things where every so often people try again to have a go at it, and there actually has been one success, but it was called Marvel Snap, and it was a sort of mobile game, and it was they obviously focused it very much on a sort of a more casual audience, so that was very successful. But it's sort of, for some people, they felt it wasn't sort of a trading card game. It sort of moved too far. So we haven't really got full details about what Might and Magic Fates will be in terms of where it sits on that spectrum. Is it going to be sort of a hardcore sort of trading card game. Probably not, because that's just too small an audience. How sort of casual are they going to make it? Well, it's not got the Marvel. I mean, one of the reasons Marvel Snap was good was it was a great game, but two, it had all the Marvel characters in it, so it's very accessible. Might and Magic isn't like that at all, so you're sort of somewhere in the middle. And again, Ubisoft, because they've made recently two sort of full on web games, pretty much Web3 games. They've said with this one, there are the cards. We're not quite clear, but some of the cards at least will be NFTs that you can trade. But they've said you don't need to use any NFTs to play this game. It doesn't give you any advantage. So whether they're going to be cosmetics or quite how they're going to deal with that, we don't know. And that's sort of again, that's a sort of balancing act that for someone like me who's thinks blockchain is really important, and you should be using it in a way that leverages its advantages. Then making a game where you don't have to use it, it's sort of what's the point? So we don't know full details, but I guess I would say it was a little bit underwhelming. Lots of normal sort of gamers at the moment hate Ubisoft for various reasons I won't go into. But Ubisoft, they just don't like Ubisoft and think they're sort of a bad company, and partly that's due to NFT. So a lot of the headlines are, silly Ubisoft still trying to make another game after all their failures. And it's not really that you've seen lots of people going, "Wow, amazing! I've been waiting for this game all my life," which I guess you wouldn't really expect. But we'll see. So I just think the problem with trading card games is there's loads of blockchain trading card games because it's very blockchain friendly. Obviously the cards clearly could be NFTs or some of the so lots of people have made these trading card games. Trading card games are also quite easy to build, relatively speaking, because you basically have it's a fixed viewpoint of a table. So you might make various tables that look nice and you may have animations on them and stuff, but you're not making a 3D open world game that's going to cost $100 million. Trading card games are pretty cheap to do. The blockchain stuff it's sort of clear how you would sort of use that. They may be doing some clever, interesting stuff in there. I think we find out more on the 1st of May when Robbie Ferguson from Immutable and Nicholas from Ubisoft are going to talk more about it. So coming out at the end of this year, so it's one of those ones where, in a sense, I hope it's really good and successful, but I sort of, it's sort of, I think the sort of sizzle build up from Immutable, we're going to announce this amazing game with this billion-dollar company, was sort of more exciting than here we're making a trading card game based on Might and Magic Fates.
Good, thanks for that. There's been quite a big turn in the legal dispute that's gone on between, let's get this right, Ready Maker and its Gibraltar sort of Ready Maker Gibraltar. No, what?
It's got very confusing, isn't it?
I just read it, and then anyway. Ready Games, isn't it? Ready Games and Ready Maker Gibraltar. Anyway, about the play token, it was revealed in February of this year that the court in Gibraltar had frozen 450 million play tokens.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all a bit of a mess. Shall I sort of step in? So I'll try and actually do a précis version. So it does strike me, having been in journalism for quite a long time, whenever you see these law cases, no matter what sector I've been in, I've always tried to avoid law cases or be very sort of precise with them, because whenever a law case is first sort of, you first read about it, it's almost like the end of the world. I remember there's a whole bunch of stuff that used to be about Apple suing people, and Apple and Nokia were suing people, and Samsung was suing Nokia and Apple, and it was always the headlines were sort of like, you're not going to be able to buy an iPhone because Samsung sued someone or something. And obviously, clearly, in terms of the law, that potentially could be an issue. But in general, with these lawsuits, you generally find out it takes forever to come to a conclusion. The conclusion is sort of worked out the same way. The status quo is upheld, and someone maybe pays someone a bit of money. It's just never as existential as it makes out. This one is obviously a very sort of tiny, minor sort of case. It's all around the play token that was launched in December last year. Even if this lawsuit wasn't happening, I don't think the price of the play token would be any different. So it was a sort of a complicated sort of build up for them launching this token. They changed the name of it from the Ready token to the play token, and they sort of, I think, rushed it out a little bit, maybe because they knew this lawsuit stuff was happening. And it basically, like all the tokens around this sort of time, it sort of launched, and then the price has sort of continually gone down ever since. So it's down whatever, 80-90%. Partly also because it's not very clear what the utility of the token is in terms of the play sort of ecosystem, which was, again, itself not very clear. Some sort of mobile gaming platform with Web3 elements. It wasn't very clear there was any real games operating, using that platform, and it didn't look like it was very unclear if any new games were going to use it. So, from that point of view, you wouldn't look at that the map. You wouldn't look at the sort of price of the token, the graph of that price, and go, oh, there was a massive lawsuit happening around here, and this side was winning at this point, and then this side was winning at the other point. And you could really see that reflected in the, in the price of the token. The price of the tokens went down, and even now that, it seems like the lawsuit has sort of come to an end. The price hasn't gone up again. So from that point of view, I sort of disagree with the lawsuit that one of the sort of elements, as you say, was the judge sort of said that the bringing of the lawsuit was detrimental to the price of the play token. I think you would say that if you didn't know anything about crypto tokens, and you would think it's amazing that a token can lose 90% of its value. I mean, that's just clearly what happens in this sector. Anyway, so the US company was called Play. It was originally called Ready Games, and they were originally nothing to do with crypto. They launched in 2016. They were trying to make a platform for mobile gaming. That didn't really work out. They then tried to do something around mobile esports, casual, hyper-casual esports. That didn't really work out, and then they pivoted into crypto. Did another funding round, and then sort of, to launch the token, they couldn't do that in the US at the time, so they set up this Gibraltar entity, actually taking one of their, she was, I think, chief product officer at the time. I think she'd been chief operating officer as well. So she was made basically the CEO of this Gibraltar entity, and the Gibraltar entity was there because there's good laws in Gibraltar around digital assets. Obviously, most of it on sort of British law, but they have a certain amount of sort of their own sort of freedom to do that, and a lot of gambling companies in Gibraltar as well, so they have quite good understanding of these sort of companies. And the weird thing was that the original company, the Ready Makers, the US company, then sort of sued the Gibraltar company for effectively not giving them enough tokens. So there was sort of this idea that they were, because the token company, the token had been based on the sort of technology from the original company, that the original company should have had more of the tokens. And I don't know, that's not really been made very clear, but when you launch tokens, it's sort of complicated about, the equity holders of the original company they would get an allocation of the tokens, rather than if I had 20% of the original equity in the company, I wouldn't expect to get 20% of the tokens, because that, otherwise there wouldn't be any tokens left for what you're trying to do, which is give them away and have community funds, all this sort of stuff. So I think there's a misunderstanding there. The funniest thing about this new case, which has come out, which is basically overturned, as you say, the previous case, and unlocked all these tokens, and basically said the Gibraltar entity is fine. There's been nothing dodgy going on there. They have access to all their tokens again. It basically said that the American entity basically had finished as a going concern by 2021, which I don't think can exactly be true, because that was when they sort of pivoted into this blockchain version.
Did you not say 2023? Was it 2021?
I think it says 2021. It said by 2021, or maybe it's 20, but it says basically, I think it's by 2021 they had no staff, no revenue, no technology development or anything like that. So basically, their point of view was this company, and then we definitely know the company had shut down in the summer of 2024, May 2024. The original Ready Makers Inc. had shut down in America as a company. It did not exist as an entity. So by the time they were bringing this lawsuit, which first was brought in Delaware in the US and then to Gibraltar, that company didn't exist anymore. So effectively, a non-existing company was suing their sort of token entity. In the lawsuit, it's not the company. It's actually the three founders, and Bitcraft, who were the main investor into the original American company. Interestingly, Bitcraft are all over blockchain investments, or have been, not so much now, but it's sort of weird that they were sort of seem to be the lead, because these the company the makers, the Ready Makers company didn't exist anymore, so someone must have been funding the lawsuit. Presumably that was Bitcraft, who wanted to get the tokens, and their lawyer was quite prominent in the initial sort of cases, saying we're fighting for our for our sort of rights. But anyway, no matter what was happening internal to the case. So basically, the judge in Gibraltar just said, if your company doesn't exist and you're suing another company for the benefit of the original company that doesn't exist, you can't do that, and you should have told me that in the first place. So, I mean, equally, maybe the judge should have done a bit of due diligence, gone into some US company website and see if this company is still existing. But anyway, he basically threw the case out. And now the final bit of the case looks like that the Gibraltar company is going to get damages off the original complainants, but those are 3 people and Bitcraft. So obviously, the original company doesn't exist. You can't sue them and get money off them because there's nothing there. So whether these original 3 people, the founders of the American company, and Bitcraft, the investor, are going to get sued, presumably are going to have to pay damages, and then presumably if that happens, they're going to appeal against it, and this thing's going to run on forever. But the fact of the matter is, sort of the play token is still going down. Effectively, that sort of company is dead. But I think the lawsuit, was sort of an interesting thing for us to talk about and people to write about, but was sort of not very actually relevant to the overall trajectory of what was going on then.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting, because obviously you can't know what would have happened to the token otherwise. They would claim that it's because of this lawsuit that it did fall so sort of radically, but obviously it was at a time when tokens were generally plummeting anyway, and so it's very likely they would have taken exactly the same trajectory as it has now. So
I mean, I guess the only argument they could say is they launched their token in the start of December, so that was still when Trump, the Trump sort of boom was still happening, but it fell apart pretty quickly. It's not. There's not. Yeah, there was an uplift then, but it's most of the tokens that were launched in the last year have followed exactly the same trajectory. So I think it would be quite hard to argue that, but obviously I'm not a lawyer. So.
Yeah. Anyways, move on. So the company that is, you would say, most eager and sort of keen to get play to earn to work, still looking for kind of sustainable solutions, is Pixels, and its CEO in particular, Luke Bawikowski. He announced this week that Pixels will indeed integrate Apptokens to your delight. So that will be sort of the first major, you would say, game developer to do so. And Gabe Layden tweeted he was happy, saying, first major integration of Apptokens is going to be Pixels. So tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, so as we banged on about every week for however long, Apptokens are inevitable. I mean, that's sort of the joke. I don't think Apptokens are only inevitable because tokens over the last year have been so sort of useless as any sort of mechanism for doing anything in games, really, around any value. So we'll sort of wait to see. I won't rehash the whole Apptokens thing, but basically it's a way of sort of putting rules around how crypto tokens are used. So it's a step back from full sort of composability and sort of liquid and being liquid assets that anyone can trade at any point. So you may not make your entire game with every token in it being an app token, but the point of app tokens is you can create some tokens that maybe have an upper or lower limit, or have a fixed price or a fixed trading pair, or can only be used in a game to do something in the game. They can't just be taken to an exchange wallet and sold, which is clearly the problem for every crypto asset at some point. You'd probably argue everything apart from Bitcoin at the moment, which price is still pretty high. Everything else, why would I hold this when I can sell it and buy Bitcoin instead, which is going up? So particularly that's been the case for games, particularly the case for Pixels. So Pixels, as you say, has been this very interesting sort of experiment over the last year where the sort of CEO Luke, who's a sort of, not a games person, he's an entrepreneur, sort of startup person. So the game itself, people argue whether Pixels is a sort of game or a social experience or whatever, and I think the gameplay features have sort of ebbed and flowed as they've tried to do other things. They've got this token, again, down 90% like everything else. And what they've been trying to do over time is they give away a lot of this token to people who are playing the game, and they've tried to focus more and more on giving it to people who won't sell it. I mean, the sort of problem is, in the current environment, it makes sense for everyone who owns any blockchain asset to sell it off now and buy Bitcoin. I mean, that's the logical sense. If you're not doing that, in a sense, you're not, you're doing something against your financial future. I don't do it because I'm interested in how these things work. So, but I'm certainly an oddity. So, what Pixels is coming up with is this idea they will have a new token called vPIXEL, backed 1-to-1 with Pixel, so it's the same price nominally, but that token you can only spend in the game or stake in the game or use in other games that are supporting this vPIXEL's token. And one of those is Forgotten Runiverse, another sort of RPG that's just launching on the Ronin blockchain that Pixels is on. So you start to have, it's not live yet, so we don't know obviously how it's going to work, but the whole point is you can potentially give away millions of dollars of this vPIXELs token, and people can either ignore it and not use it, stake it and get more, or spend it in games. So you basically have this token that you can give loads of away. You can give as much of it away as you want to, because you can't cash it out to get USDC, Bitcoin, whatever. The only thing you do is spend it in the game. So you're forcing people basically to do something in the game. Obviously, they may then be doing something in the game to then get the Pixels token, which they will then still sell off. So there's a sort of, you end up with a sort of cascade. You may not be solving the problem. It doesn't solve everything, but at least it's a first step. And obviously what we've seen over the last sort of year in particular is people launching tokens, giving away allocations to people who have done all these play to earn, play to airdrop type events. And they've been doing that in the hope that people will go, oh, this is a really great game. I really love these people. They give me loads of money, and then start playing the game. Of course, what's happened is people have gone, they give me loads of money. That's great. I'm gonna sell it off and cash it out or buy Bitcoin. So the price of your token obviously goes down because you can't drive enough utility. You haven't got enough weirdos like me who are prepared to spend the money in the game. So Apptokens is an attempt to sort of fix that, and there are lots of other elements to it that we'll see over time. But I think more and more we are seeing the sort of what I would sort of self-describe as the smart people trying to go, let's at least try this. We've tried lots of other things, it's just nothing's working. How can we start to use these sort of tools, and how can we take a step back in the sense from decentralization? That was obviously I think everyone's first reaction when they came out with these sort of protocols. Like, well, that's not very blockchain, is it? We may as well just make a Web2 game. That's not the case. But you are sort of you are being more pragmatic about how you can use these sort of this new technology, but put some guardrails around it. And it's interesting that Jeff Zerlin from Axie.
Yeah, I was going to get to that.
Yeah, also put out this tweet saying, sort of a bit couched around it, saying, we're not saying we're going to use Apptokens for Axie, but if we were, this is exactly how we do it. Exactly how we do it.
And Alexander Larsen had also said, when they was talking about Atiya's legacy, he sort of hinted, didn't exactly say we're going to use Apptokens for a very similar sort of thing. So they've been teasing it for a while. I think they are definitely very interested in it.
And their entire view is, how we do it is we would have a token that you can't cash out unless unless you've staked a certain amount of Axie token, or unless you've got a certain amount of reputation in the system, or that you prove to us you're a good actor, and we'll let you cash some of that out. As again, I said, this doesn't solve all the human psychology problems about you've got something that's worth $100, and you want 100, you want to cash that out, sort of thing. But I think it's an experiment to do that, and you will have some tokens that won't have those guardrails, but some tokens, particularly if you're giving them away, even with Axie at the moment, they have 100,000 daily active unique wallets, but that's because they're giving away the token, and that obviously has to have an impact on the price, because a large proportion of people will be selling that. So, and I think, as we said before, the other thing, when you start to see everything through an Apptokens type lens, you start to see games that aren't using that official protocol, but have some very Apptoken type features in there. So one of the games that we've mentioned before that I sort of work with is Soccerverse, and they have a crypto token, but you can really only spend it in the game. It's not an app token, it doesn't use that protocol, but it has very similar sort of features that it only has value in the game, and that you sort of can cash it out, but has to be cashed out on a peer-to-peer platform. So you can only cash it out if other people are sort of buying it. So again, that doesn't solve all your problems. Because you can't have that sort of one of the great things about crypto, when the crypto market's enthusiastic and everything's going up, is giving away tokens is great for building an audience. But as we've seen, Pixel's going from 1 million daily active unique wallets at one point down to 30,000 now with these new changes. That's a pretty big drop off. And how many of those 1 million players were really very keen on playing the game in the first place, and how many were just there to be extractive? You need a balance of the two, clearly. But I think Apptokens allows you to sort of differentiate those different sorts of player types in a more sophisticated manner.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so Mythical Games FIFA Rivals, that was unveiled, I think it was at the end of 2024, wasn't it? Or was it early 2025? No, it's last year. We knew it had been sort of said that it was going to be launched sometime in the summer of 2025, not exactly clear when. Now we know that they're looking to launch it officially globally in conjunction with the FIFA Club World Cup that sets off in, I think, 14th
July.
of June.
Yeah,
June, I think in June, yeah. In the US, but it's so it's been said that that's sort of what they're aiming for in terms of the official launch. However, they're going to do a pre-release in May as well, which is kind of something that was revealed in an interview with the game developer Bacon Games, Colombian-based startup. And so we sort of looked into that, wrote that up, and Mythical Games have sort of liked it and commented on the news and stuff. So it seems like that's sort of the first kind of big milestone they're looking to do. I was going to say it's not quite ready, but they're just kind of at the end of touching up the finishing details sort of thing. So that's something to look forward to. Do you have anything to add to that sort of news?
No, not really. It's a good spot from you. The only one thing I would say is that they put out a trailer that didn't show any real life footballers or any sort of real life. There was no real life elements in it, but it does seem, at least that sort of article or talk around it has confirmed from Mythical that there are real life. They have got licenses for real life players and clubs. So that's obviously
we still don't know. Yeah, we still don't know much about sort of the Web3 features, what that's going to be. It will be slightly different, or quite a lot different, to NFL Rivals, which is the NFL licensed sports mobile game from Mythical Games, where the players are Web3 assets. You would assume there is some sort of similar thing here. It's going to be more sort of fantasy style, and it's going to be sort of some superhuman abilities and that sort of thing. So it's not just a pure kind of football game. It'll be kind of other. It'll be, you get the sense that it's going to be a strong game, even from a Web2 perspective. That's what they're aiming for anyway, to sort of attract kind of general.
I think it'd be a lot
football
more
fans and.
A lot more arcadey. I mean, the way that NFL Rivals is a very arcadey take on American football. You can get American football games that are very simulator heavy, and there is that sort of style that doesn't really work for mobile. Certainly not for new brands. So I think it'd be sort of fairly lightweight, and obviously even sort of soccer as Mythical keep pointing out, soccer is the sort of the big global sort of sport. So I think they really want to go very wide, and even like going back to what we started off with sort of trading card games. Within any genre, you can be hardcore niche and fulfill that audience, or sort of go really broad and just attract sort of anyone who has any passing interest. And obviously, when you get to that level, it's sort of hard because people go, "It's not a very serious game," or that's not proper soccer. But I think with soccer, as you say, they have these sort of superhuman power ups almost. They're going to go very sort of hyper realistic. It's going to be very, I think, very sort of almost like hyper casual in the sort of the gameplay, and then so that'll be interesting how that then links into having real world assets in that game as well, and people trading them and stuff like that. So I think it's I think that's we always like mythical stuff, but I think that's sort of in terms of the how the blockchain and the gameplay is going to work together. I think that's sort of certainly the most interesting one in the next 6 months.
Yeah. Our kids are certainly excited about that one. And you are excited about the Sandbox. So tell us more about Alpha Season 5, what you've been up to so far, and what's excited you the most.
Yeah, I haven't done as much of it as I would have liked, actually, but still think 2.5 weeks left. So there's various experiences in there, and the one I've been playing this week is surprisingly the British Museum. So when we were kids, slightly boring, sort of big building in London with lots of Egyptian statues and such like Assyrian war friezes and things. Rosetta Stone, famous one, I suppose. But they've actually done a pretty good job, I would say. So you go to the British Museum experience. There is a sort of a sort of building. You're walking into something that looks like the British Museum to some extent, and there are quite a lot of mini games in there. And I wouldn't say they're hard. They are sort of a little bit frustrating in the sense that you sort of have to work out sort of how they operate. It's not the best tutorials sort of in there. I've played a couple of them, but I think that they're that sort of thing is, I find it, at least other people might find it not the case. I found it more sort of compelling than frustrating. Sometimes you sort of play these games, you just go, no one, I can't be bothered, sort of thing. Whereas these ones are sort of like, no, I want to work out, I'm sort of compelled to try and finish them off. I'm not, most of them I haven't done yet because they're multi-part sort of systems. Obviously, the whole point about sort of Sandbox is that when you do those, you can win in-game assets, and also because this is the Alpha Season 5, the more of these experiences you sort of complete or get involved with, you get XP points, and that takes you along a battle pass, and you get free things from there, or the opportunity to mint other passes to other elements. I mean, there's different. So there's the Jurassic World one is the one we've spoken about a lot. There's one with can't remember the band, a team, I think they're called, Korean sort of K-pop band. They announced a Bruce Lee thing they're going to be doing. I'm not sure it's part of this. No, it is. Well, they've done they're doing a land sale around it. I'm not sure they're launching a social hub. I'm not sure that's part of Alpha 5 or not, but there will be a single player thing coming, I guess, in Alpha 6. So yeah, just a lot of stuff sort of going around that, and the more time I spend with the Sandbox and sort of messing around with things, I get a little bit more excited. It's still very clunky. It's still, the reward system is obviously, they sort of, again, going back to what we were talking about, when you're giving away free stuff, they want to sort of be careful and controlled about how they are doing that, because the Sandbox has, I think, that they always give out quite big figures for their participation in these alpha events. So I imagine a bit of that is multi-accounting, although they sort of try their best. You have to go through a KYC system to do that, so I guess they sort of limit it to some degree. I was just sort of impressed with, I think the British Museum one had been built by the Sandbox people themselves, and it was sort of quite well done.
Good. And on that note, we'll finish off for the week. Thank you all for tuning in, and see you all next week. Bye bye.